Yeah, it's real people's money at that point. That's basically being one way locked up and basically burnt in a sense until we ship the next updates.
To my surprise, I got a MEV boost block for 7 ETH a couple weeks ago.
And out of all the blockchains that are out there, I'd wager that Ethereum is really the one that has the biggest hobbyist community that runs the network itself, because it's possible. In other chains, that isn't even a possibility because of how large they are or the compute requirements.
Hey guys, welcome back to the second episode of Beneath the Layers by Offchain Labs. I'm your host Hunter, and today's conversation we actually spoke with Preston Van Loon and Raul Jordan. We touched on their personal lives, how they co-founded Prysmatic Labs, what they're doing now at Offchain Labs, and just their thoughts on the future of Ethereum. Let's get into it. Preston, Raul, how we doing, guys?
All right.
I'm doing excellent. It's good to be here with you guys.
Awesome. Likewise. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. Very excited to have you guys on today. Alongside the obligatory Ethereum stuff that we'll kind of move over today, I want to dig a little bit into your personal lives. Not unlike an intrusive kind of legal level, of course, but just who knew that some people have things to do outside of crypto, right? It turns out you guys have a lot. So going a little bit back, how about we start with very simple, where you guys were born and raised, and maybe a little bit about maybe your upbringing that contributed to your passion for software engineering today. And I guess Preston, if you want, you can go first. You look ready to answer.
I will go first. I am so ready to answer. Okay. I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, most of my life, and I guess when I was around like 13 or 14, we moved to the UK. We lived in London for all my high school, pretty much, and around that time was a lot of goofing off on my computer instead of doing homework or whatever I was supposed to do. I wasn't a very good student, I was playing like World of Warcraft or I don't know, whatever, Counter-Strike. And I got really interested in like modding games and running my own servers and stuff like that, and kind of just like tinkering and hacking around. And I think that is sort of where I got inspired, to be on the computer and to learn programming. I learned what a Boolean was. So kind of always been sort of self-taught, but it came from video games for the most part.
You see, you learned what a Boolean was while you were playing video games?
Yeah, because I was programming a World of Warcraft bot that would go around and like all night go mine all the ores for me, which is a very tedious task. And then I would go sell them in the marketplace, and then I would take the gold and then I would sell it for real money. So I was like,
okay.
Yeah, I mean that's I got like you sort of like you can see where I'm going. Like if I could make money with goofing off and programming,
right.
And it just long story short, it escalated to this point where on this call now I'm goofing off and making money in crypto with all you guys. So it's just been a blast.
What a dream, huh? Just goofing off and making money. I like that.
Yeah.
What about you, Raul?
Yeah, I wish I discovered, hacking around on World of Warcraft as early as Preston. But I also, I think I also came from kind of the MMO world with RuneScape, which is also a big thing. If you ask a lot of people, trading and all that crazy organic environment that formed, and I think a lot of us in crypto can relate to those times. But no, I'm originally from Honduras. Actually, it's a small, very small country in Central America, and tech hasn't, it's barely made its entry really there, in the sense that it's a country that has been pretty underdeveloped for many years. Uh, you know, I, for example, came from a family that wasn't too exposed to these things. But my whole life, I really wanted to, I guess, make an impact for myself and do something different. And I realized from the very beginning that what I wanted to do was really study abroad and go and see the world. I dreamt about that my whole life. So I was fortunate enough that I was able to get into a good school here in the U.S. And I was able to graduate from high school back in Honduras, came here, learned about all the crazy things you could do with computers, really. How I got interested in crypto, and what inspired me to really go into that was I took my first computer science course in college, and I realized that it was so cool that from your computer you can produce something that people use. I thought that was pretty mind blowing because you can just pressing around a bunch of buttons, you build something that real people get value out of. And funny enough, the first project that I built was a food delivery app with a bunch of friends in college. And this
Oh,
was kind
wow.
of pre DoorDash days, so it wasn't really a big thing. And we were doing delivery orders from restaurants in the little college area, and we actually got in trouble for that because it's a liability to
Oh,
actually
wow.
run a business out of your dorm, apparently. Um, but since that experience, it just it shaped all my thinking around, hey, I want to really get out there, build stuff that people actually use. And now with Prism and Ethereum, and seeing people actually running this huge global network, it's pretty mind blowing.
100%. By the way, I love like the stark difference between kind of like both of your like I want to say like upbringings that led to software engineering. Like Preston's a lot more degenerate in nature. Rose is like a little like very inspiring in a way. But I love it. Like all roads lead to one thing, I guess in this case, which is software engineering in this case.
Exactly.
That's dope. And I think the other comment I had too was kind of like, with Preston, you kind of coming from San Antonio, you being born in San Antonio, and Raul, you being born in Honduras. It's quite amazing how like a lot of society is like, greatest kind of tech people and even innovators come from like outside like the biggest hubs, which I mean I would consider like New York City, Silicon Valley, Beijing, like. I mean, I don't know. I think I mentioned this to you guys before, but I figured it has to be something in the water, but I don't know what it is. Like you guys have an idea of like what what caused you to be gigabrains? I guess is what I'm asking, literally.
No, I think big cities people are grinding. They're figuring out just how to get ahead in life through all the competition. And I was fortunate enough to be able to really just goof around and also explore and just be curious about stuff. Like, why are things the way they are? I think those some of the qualities that really make engineering as fun as it is. I think to Preston and I, growing up, my family, my aunt had a water analysis lab. Thought it was the coolest thing ever. You can just mess around with beakers and with dangerous chemical compounds, and I wish I had computers to do that with. But even then, that was a good start to really just tinker and mess around. And those are some of the qualities that I think I really value.
Totally. I feel like curiosity is at the root of like all great inventions.
Absolutely, and I think that's something Raul and I share pretty deeply. Is like everything we do in terms of like computer science and in our careers is about learning something new and trying to leave it in a better place, perhaps. Like I think that's a lot about how we actually ended up working together was finding Ethereum and being curious. And curiosity drives a lot of innovation, and then when there's an opportunity to make a positive impact, I mean, it's just there's nothing better you could have um, to do. I mean, it's just excellent.
Definitely. I mean, I was gonna say probably like second to like hitting that one leverage trade, you know. But yeah, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Little too degenerate for today's call. Um, so yeah, so with that being said, I feel like you know, what I'd love to hear more about too, at least maybe Raul from your point of view, was what it was like then going from Honduras to going to school, in the U.S., which in this case was Harvard. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that process and what it was like even working there at Harvard.
It was pretty crazy because like I said, I wasn't as nearly as prepared as a lot of the kids that go to schools like that. I kind of learned a lot of this stuff on my own and kind of came here, and just people from all walks of life. It's really a microcosm of, I guess, what American society in many ways. The good and bad parts. But I think what was really interesting is, like I said, like how many folks are really risk averse at these big institutions, and when it comes to even going into crypto, it's something that not many people would even consider, even until recently, right? I think in a lot of places people want to wait until it's as de-risked as possible for a career path or stability to do something, right? Startups have gained a lot of traction, but even then, I think folks are very careful about throwing themselves at doing something for like 5 to 10 years. So I guess was always kind of crazy myself for just like going for it and doing things that are extremely uncertain but for fun. And I think fun and curiosity just really drives me. So really that's how we met Preston. Just wanted to work on something interesting and actually make a difference. And we had no idea about how we would even like survive on this or build a team. And I think the waves and the tides were on our side, and we managed to get through.
I love that too. I can't help but notice like Preston like laughing half the time you were saying that. Like that's dope. And what about yourself, Preston? I feel like something at least notable about your history was like working at Google. Um, Maybe love to hear a little bit about like how like maybe like your story behind getting there,
Yeah.
and then of course working there.
Yeah. So, like I said, I wasn't a good student, so um, it starts there. I went to a state school in Tennessee for a few years, and originally wanted to be a pilot. That's sort of what I wanted to do. I got my private pilot's license, and then I realized that I'd probably have to look a certain way, cut my hair, to be an airline pilot. No one's gonna want a Wookiee looking bum looking dude flying their plane. So I say, well, I'm good at computers, right? I'm gonna stick to that. But eventually, I just was like frustrated with school, so I quit school and just started doing whatever, working wherever I could, and doing a lot of sort of e-commerce stuff. But I was building experience and learning a lot of things, learning new frameworks, learning new technologies. Like I was doing my job, but then constantly learning. I'm not a good student, but I'm very good at uh, being self-taught when I'm interested and when no one's telling me to do it. I think that's sort of the problem. If someone tells me to go learn something, I don't want to do it. But if I want to do it, then I'm going to do it.
Facts.
Yep. And so I'm doing that for a few years out of school. Not really like not wasting time, just learning things. And I was searching stuff on Google. I think it was like I needed to learn more about Python, a Python compiler or interpreter or something like that. And at the top of the Google search bar comes down this like black bar, and it was like, "You want to play a game?" And I was like, "What is this? Like, am I getting hacked over here?" Um, so I click it, and then the whole screen turns black, right? The whole thing turns black, and then it's just got like a terminal prompt, and ends up being this thing called FooBar, where Google has this a series of games you can play that are all programming challenges, and they're all rabbit themed. So it's a bit of like going down the rabbit hole, which we're very familiar with as
Oh.
crypto people. Uh, and I was doing these challenges. They were pretty fun. They're all algorithms questions, like how do you organize these rabbits and sort them in the most efficient way, stuff like that. Um, but eventually, you get through and find it's a recruiting tool. Then I had a recruiter emailing me saying, "Hey, you did pretty good on this little game. That's actually a tool we're using to find people." Um, I said, okay, cool. And then they invited me to New York City to interview, like the skip the phone interviews and the recruiter screening. We're just going to toss you in, person to person with the interviewers. And I did that, and it was brutal. Like there was like I think five, almost hour-long interviews, like 5 to 6 hours of
Jeez.
interviewing with a lunch in there. It's intense, and they're all like probably you're standing up the whole time, you're sweating, you're doing the whiteboard. It sucks. It's not fun. But I didn't get the job that time,
Jeez.
and they said, you didn't do that bad actually, but you just didn't quite get there. Like I think, knowing what I know now, I was like maybe like one interviewer that I wasn't able to convince. So they said, you can do it again in a year. We'll call you back in a year. And I said, whatever. I don't even want to work there. Thinking that in my mind. I didn't say that, but they called me back a year later, and then I knew what it was going to be like. I had a lot of time and training, and I built up a lot more skills in that year. So they invited me back, and I blew it out of the water pretty much. And then they hired me, which was awesome. Working in Google New York City was a really unique opportunity. It was really fun. Learned a lot of skills that we have taken on in the Prism project, and I learned a lot of things about software engineering. And the cool part about working at Google is almost everything is open within the company, so you can read how everything works, how Google Photos works, how Gmail works.
Oh wow.
Like, you want to learn it, the design documents are there. You can figure out these patterns, and I took a lot of knowledge with me. I really made my time there worth it. And then I found Ethereum, and I got obsessed with that. I tried to convince them to do it, but for one reason or another, they weren't moving along with that. So um, ended up leaving in the end to pursue crypto stuff full time with Raul.
Dope. And like I think one thing that's maybe notable there is that Google as this, I guess, or I should say, a really Alphabet as this like big kind of corporate company, kind of seems like the opposite place someone that's currently crypto aligned would be working at. Did you see like any correlation kind of working at Google and now being in crypto that maybe like, I don't know, maybe that I'm missing?
Yeah, like I feel like we argue that centralization is bad, decentralization is good. They're like two opposite things. Well, what drew me to Google was the opportunity to make an impact, and Google's scale is undeniably large, right? So if you can even do a little bit at Google, it actually affects a lot of things and a lot of people. Um, in the end, it just felt like I was doing a little bit, so I wasn't quite getting that impact that I had hoped for. Where Ethereum was, at the time, this is 2017, towards the end of the year, was really starting to emerge and getting traction and getting attention and saying, okay, this is something big. It's an opportunity to make a really big impact. So in that, they're aligned. There's a lot of smart people are impact driven. Google and blockchains have different missions, so it sort of makes sense that I couldn't get them on board with it, or nobody really could. It wasn't only me. There were a lot of people internally asking to do it, but I mean, they just really serve different purposes. There's a time and place for centralization and a time and place for decentralization. When it comes to the future of finance and internet money, it's definitely a decentralized future. So yeah, they're just different is the short answer.
Totally. I guess for food delivery, that's also centralized as well.
Exactly.
So how'd you guys meet? I guess the year is 2017, right? Ethereum's kind of just becoming a popular thing.
The year's 2017. It's actually after CryptoKitties was the first application that really almost like break the network in terms of gas price being unsustainably high. And everyone was talking about, we need to scale, we need to do something, it needs to grow. And Vitalik was doing all these like super fancy research talks all over the world about what we could do. And I was online, I was reading about this stuff, and I was wondering who's working on this, right? And I dug deeper, and like I could only find a few scattered documents. I realized that nobody was actually making this happen, right? And I wasn't obviously as knowledgeable in Ethereum at the time, and but I wanted to do something about it. So in the hopes of finding folks that were a lot smarter than I was, I posted on this obscure research, this obscure like communication forum. It's called, like, it was like the Go Ethereum project's like support channel. It was this thing called Gitter, and I posted, hey, does anyone want to work on this stuff for Ethereum? And Preston was the first to reach out. He was like, hey, I might be interested.
He was lurking. He was just stalking that page, waiting for someone to just.
We actually got like 12 people or 13 people that reached out at the same time after Preston, and they were all like, hey, we're thinking the same thing. Like, let's put something together, And it's really crazy that we were all in different parts of the world. Nobody knew each other, but we just started working. I flew out to meet Preston in New York City basically the next week, just to get to know him better and figure out, okay, how can we actually get a team off the ground. And from there, I guess the rest is history. We managed to get a lot of support from the Ethereum Foundation, from different organizations, and we got enough funding to start at least incentivizing people to do this part time.
That's amazing. And Raul, you mentioned earlier that you've had kind of experience, like like experiences, I guess, kind of running a startup and doing stuff like that. But Preston, I'd love to hear maybe from your end, like what was it like? I guess I should say, what helped you in your past work experiences that helped you kind of both start and run Prysmatic Labs?
Yeah, we learned a lot through that. But what really helped me was a lot of the things I had, a lot of the mistakes I had already done. Right, one of the most important things I think we took with us was the need for thinking through solutions before implementing them. Like Ethereum's not a hackathon. If we're going there and we're saying we're going to scale this thing, we can't just like go hack it together. It has to be real methodical, documented, these kind of things. Some of these best practices from software engineering, like I think it was like right after I met Raul and we started doing this thing, I said, hey, read this book. It's called The Clean Code by Robert Martin. And in there, we're just, really trying to identify like what is great software, to start there. And then how do we apply the amazing research that the true brains are putting together. Raul and I are, I think, relatively smart, but there are people far beyond smarter than us that have designed these systems, and we're really just in here saying, "Wow, great idea! We'll build it now." um, but we needed to make sure that it would be done well, because it would be almost immortal, standing the test of time. You still have code from Ethereum Genesis that runs. You have to validate all these or process all these blocks since forever. So it had to be well written and well done and stand the test of time.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how the batches of people that worked on Ethereum core dev over the years. I think we definitely weren't some of the earliest people, but we were there at a very interesting time. When Ethereum first started, the folks that were involved were really very interesting. They were the kinds of folks that don't trust anything that isn't open source built. Any even hardware that they build themselves. They put together everything that they create, that they use. Super hardcore about just building this stuff, and very ideologically driven. A lot of folks were not particularly coming from a software engineering background, but just really fascinated by crypto. And the next batches that came on board started caring a lot more about how do we actually scale the software practices here, like make them a lot better. And Preston's like knowledge from Google like brought in a lot of ideas on how to actually make this a professional project and make it a lot more robust. Like we had a chance to try new things and do things well. Working on Ethereum proof of stake. And I think that really paid off. I think the folks that are involved now, it's even a bigger group. It's even more globally decentralized, which is amazing. I think, and people's opinions are highly valued in this space, which is really cool.
Totally. I think that's also like even myself, like what brought me to this space and what keeps me here is it's just like the amount of opportunity that one has to make a difference. It's a lot bigger in this space than it is anywhere else. At least that I've seen. But I think the other thing then is obviously you guys you started Prysmatic Labs, you started contributing to Ethereum, and there's definitely like a huge timeline there. Although it was just 2017, 2018 roughly, you guys formed Prysmatic Labs. It's been roughly like almost 5-6 years. That's insane. Number one, it's insane. But the first big update that you guys shipped, I guess, was the Beaconchain. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that, kind of leading up to shipping it, and maybe what it felt like actually, deploying it?
Okay, I will start. Beaconchain, right? So we started working on this at the beginning of 2018, right? That we met in 2017 and said, "Oh, you're cool, everything's cool. Let's do this. Make Ethereum great again." But it was a really long road to get to the Beaconchain. Actually, we had to iterate through research, and arguably we were a little bit too early, too eager. We saw oh, there's some ideas, like kind of old research that's out there. Let's just start building it. We start building it. We start thinking about it, and we start realizing this is not going to work. We got to start over. I think we did that 2 or 3 times. Just complete rewrite of everything.
Wow.
Originally, we wanted to just sprinkle proof of stake into Geth, right? So into the Go Ethereum client, which is the most popular one. Started realizing that was getting difficult to maintain. The Go Ethereum project moves pretty quickly, and we were also moving pretty quickly. So we're having a lot of conflicting information, conflicting code. So we started our own thing called Prism and say this. We still don't know how it works, but it's starting to look like it's going to run alongside Go Ethereum or somehow be its own thing. Then we get to a point where things sort of start to work, right? We start running pseudo test nets where we've got validators validating, producing blocks, making attestations. We don't quite have some key components like signature verification. That didn't come till later, which is very important, right? That's the basis for all this. The cryptography was missing. So it wasn't quite a blockchain, but it was something. And I don't know, we kept iterating from there, multiple test nets, and actually leading up to the launch day for the Beaconchain is really exciting. And I think Raul is the best one to tell that part of the story.
Oh man, I mean, the launch of the Beaconchain was the start of a really multi-year roadmap for like how Ethereum will fully transition to proof of stake, and it was very very crazy because once that launched, it's basically a point of no return. So the way it worked is there was this smart contract on Ethereum that had a certain amount of ETH that you can deposit, and after a certain threshold, basically this proof of stake chain called the Beaconchain would start. And this thing was going to be eventually the foundation for Ethereum itself. Like it's basically the new engine for how Ethereum runs. And it was supposed to launch like December 1st, 2020. We were pretty far from the threshold. Bitcoiners were calling us out every day on Twitter that this thing is never going to happen. And within the span of like 24 hours, right, it filled up. Like thousands and thousands of people deposited ETH to become validators, right? The threshold was like 16,000 something validators, and it's quite a lot of ETH, right, even today. So it was really crazy because at that point, we know we still had bugs in our software. We know it wasn't perfect, but like it or not, December 1st at 6 a.m. Eastern, the thing is going to launch. And the problem is we can't just it's decentralized, right? You don't really control the software, so we can push updates to the software, but you have to tell people like, hey, download our fix. Like if there's a bug, you have to like shout everywhere and be like, hey, please download our software, because we don't have a master node, contrary to popular belief. So it was pretty crazy. The day leading up, we were figuring out last minute bugs, like talking to people. Everyone's nervous, and when it happened, it was amazing. It's like basically a machine that's moving on its own. It's flying on its own. It's producing blocks that are not ours for the first time, which is pretty crazy. So really, it was in retrospect the hardest thing we've ever done because it was basically the genesis of everything.
And I'm sure even like psychologically, right? It's insane. Like this thing that you guys have created, like you said, like for the first time, is you're not running on your own. It's like it's taking users' funds. It's like that's all this value now, pretty much, almost out of thin air, seemingly.
Yeah, it's real people's money at that point. That's basically being one way locked up and basically burnt in a sense until we ship the next updates. So people are placing a ton of expectation on Ethereum itself. That will Ethereum deliver? And of course, nobody makes any promises. Everyone is aware of the risks. And the people that supported us, that supported the project, are that were there early on. Really made this happen, right? Like you need people to really believe in this thing to take off.
Right, totally. Which is funny because I mean, at the end of the day, it's like while this space is of course very very heavily research and kind of tech oriented, it's also very like kind of like philosophical in a way. Like if people didn't truly believe this technology would would really succeed, or I guess maybe even believe that there was a need for the technology, then frankly, no one would be throwing their ETH or in this case money at it, frankly, right, to get it to run, which is insane. Again, it's like so it's insane how this space can mix like such like kind of psychological like kind of I guess thinking and such like really really hardcore technical and cryptography kind of stuff. Um, Truly insane. But so in between that though, in between that and kind of shipping the rest of what you said was kind of the beginning of like this kind of multi-year Ethereum roadmap. You guys were considering joining another team as in like joining like a layer 2 team, I think is the understanding. I'd love to hear about kind of your process behind that, what you were thinking during that time, I guess, and why it was a necessity in your mind.
Yeah, so I was reaching for the mouse there. Yeah, so in the last few years since the Beaconchain, we've done some pretty cool stuff, right? We've successfully ran the Beaconchain without I don't know, any catastrophic failures for several years. We shipped the merge, which was incredible, right? The full switch to proof of stake, right? When Beaconchain launched, it was its own little thing. I guess you could call it a side chain. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't quite integrated into Ethereum yet.
Mhm.
And so we launched the merge, and that was really, turning point of like, well, okay, now we've launched proof of stake. That's sort of what we've been working on since we started. But what we started doing was working on scalability. We said, okay, well, CryptoKitties is taking over everything, and there's not enough room for anything else. So we need to fix this right away. 14 transactions per second is not enough for global money, so let's do better. So we wanted to get back to the roots. We wanted to get back to the original idea. So why are we here? Why are we working on Ethereum? It's interesting and needs to go fast. Well, the roadmap is looking more and more like a roll-up centric roadmap, right? Where a lot of the scaling is going to be focused on layer twos and other ideas. And naturally, we thought, okay, well, we're living off of grants, right? We're living off of donations, and it's always in the back of our mind that those are not a guarantee. They could go away, right? We have no revenue, we have no profits or anything. We're not making money off this. Is free public goods, open source software, true to Ethereum. We want to just put it out there and make it so. So we're thinking like, okay, well, at some point we're gonna have to make some money. So we're thinking, all right, well, I can do these other business ventures, running some managed service or something, or we could launch a layer 2. Well, layer 2 is already around the time getting a bit saturated. There are already 2, 3, 4 great ones out there. So we thought, oh, instead of trying and competing for market share, which we're already way behind on, let's just join a team and work together to build. There was a common goal, common mission. Let's go build something great. So we started talking to everybody, and it wasn't really an easy decision because there are a lot of great people out there. But ultimately, we've gone with joining Offchain Labs and working with Arbitrum, and that's just been absolutely fantastic. Looking back now in hindsight, this is definitely the right choice, and I'm really really happy with it. I'm sure Raul has a lot to say as well, and I'll pass it to him.
Yeah, like Preston said, for a long time we were just thinking like, what's the future of this stuff? And all roads really led to L2. And I think even like L1 core devs, like Ethereum core devs, even Vitalik, would constantly believe that the future of Ethereum, are rollups. And that's why a lot of the even recent innovations are focused on making rollups cheaper and better, right? Like one of the big things that we're focused on shipping is this thing called EIP 4844, which is a change to Ethereum that actually makes the cost for rollups just a lot cheaper. drastically cheaper. And this translates directly into cost for users themselves. So, if it's already cheap, with Nitro, like imagine after Nitro and what's coming next. So, we're just thinking about the future, and we think a lot of the future lies also in execution environments. So something that we're particularly passionate about is what's happening with Arbitrum stylus. So later this year, people will be able to write contracts in programming languages of their choice. So you can actually deploy Rust code or C or other crazy things to basically Arbitrum, which is secured by Ethereum. And that's I think a really stepwise, like 0 to 1 improvement in what people will build. One of the things that inspired me personally about Ethereum back in the day is they had this slogan. Well, they meaning I guess the Ethereum community, that was called that said, "We have no features." Like the idea is that Ethereum is whatever you build on it, right? We're not telling you what you should use it for. It's a general compute platform. And I think that's what's happening with L2s and with the innovation in Arbitrum. So it was super natural for us, when we met the Offchain Labs team. We spoke to Ed at length many times, and it just felt like the right place to be. We wanted to be part of that group. We wanted to be part of the team, and now we are. And yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah, no, that's and I think to your point, it's like kind of displaying that the platform that you're building on, in this case, was Ethereum, being this general compute platform. It's very powerful, actually. In a way, it's sometimes less is more, and I think that's what's made Ethereum such an amazing ground to build on, especially, of course, layer 2s on. But then you're kind of now able to have that same type of platform, as you mentioned, like on Arbitrum, and hopefully soon with with Stylus, kind of being able to kind of literally kind of bring over like an entire new community into the Ethereum ecosystem, of course, via layer 2, which is insane. Like the amount of stuff that's going to come out of that. So yeah, I think what's the more exciting thing about Stylus, to me at least, as a non-developer, is not so much that C, C++, Rust, all these different languages will be available. It's more so kind of being able to see which dApps I'll be able to use that are leveraging that type of language on Arbitrum. So yeah, I'm really excited for that too, from a degenerate perspective, I mean. But yeah, so I think the you guys kind of, obviously this was last year, I should say, timeline wise, this was last year. Back in October it was announced that Prism or Prysmatic Labs had officially kind of joined Offchain Labs. And the most recent update, or the most recent, I should say, we'll call it upgrade, update, whatever you want to call it, thing that was shipped on Ethereum was Shanghai. And that pretty much completed the Ethereum roadmap in the short term, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the full circle of when people first, deposited ETH into proof of stake Ethereum, and now they can actually withdraw their ETH, and it's an amazing event because all of a sudden, like it's the huge risk that people were taking and believing in this project is now there. It works. It's available. And anyone can come in a permissionless way and secure the network by staking their ETH. Which is amazing. There's no control over that. It's fully decentralized, permissionless, and it works. So it closed the loop. It basically bridged Ethereum into the work that we were doing for these past few years, and now our software Prism, still runs, if not the majority of the nodes on the network run Prism. A big chunk of them still run Prism. So people are running Ethereum using our software, and it runs Ethereum mainnet, which is amazing.
100%. Like, I think I mentioned this to you guys before, but like whenever I look over at like my validator, I'm just like so proud of it. It's like I have a child, but I don't have to do anything to take care of it. I mean, obviously I have to make sure it's connected to the Wi-Fi, but that's it. The contributing to the network is as easy as plugging something in and kind of like running your own node, which is insane. I have a validator, of course, in this case, but yeah, it's just insane to think about that like one person that can literally take like a relatively small computer, physically speaking, and contribute to this enormous network that we all love and care about. That to me is true power at the end of the day. So you guys, of course, joining Offchain Labs, shipping Shanghai. You know, I think one thing people would probably ask is like, okay, like, are you guys only focusing on layer 2 or Arbitrum stuff now? Are you still doing Ethereum related stuff? Yeah, I'd love to hear kind of, you know, from your end, like what the case currently is and maybe what you're, you know, looking forward to from both ends, I guess.
Also, aside from, of course, we're working a lot on very exciting Arbitrum projects, but of course, Prism is still has quite a lot on its roadmap. So the biggest thing that is coming is this EIP 4844 that will decrease costs on Arbitrum a lot. So there's a lot of overlap, and the overlap will only grow even more as time goes on between L2 work, on Arbitrum, and Ethereum work on the base layer. I think it's amazing that, we're under the same roof and basically the same, same digital roof as the folks that made
I like
Arbitrum
that.
happen, and we have some of the folks that made Ethereum proof of stake happen, and we talk all the time, all day about what's going on, about how we can use some of the tech from Arbitrum possibly on Ethereum or vice versa, and the gap is closing there because Ethereum is focused on enabling rollups. That's the goal. It's basically it's the censorship resistant layer for rollup security. So a lot of conversations have a ton of overlap, a lot of things that we benefit from each other. So it's very natural.
So if I were to list, let's say, like a couple of things, let's just say sharding, account abstraction. You mentioned EIP 4844. I'm going to mention EIP 6969, which now I know is an actual thing. Like out of all those four, or maybe even ones that I'm not mentioning, like what are you like the most excited about seeing? Even if you're not necessarily directly working on, I'd love to hear about like what you guys are excited to see be shipped. I'll ask you to go, Preston. Since
Yeah,
Raul just went.
yeah. There's so much on the horizon there. And I tend to think about, I'm most excited about what we're working on right now, which is the data availability layers, and really helping L2 become cheaper, more sustainable with the proto-dank sharding and those kind of ideas. Um, there's also a lot of really cool stuff happening, account abstraction, these are the things, but that's going to really lower fees a lot and really enable scaling in the short term. So I'm very excited to see that coming along, and it's getting so close. It's right there, it's tangible, it's coming along really nicely. So that's what I'm like, most excited about at the moment.
And Raul, I guess for you would be 4844 or
That's one of them, but I think what I'm most excited about really is the work that's happening to solve a lot of the MEV problems on Ethereum. So for folks that might not be as familiar and maybe have heard the term, there's a lot of activity that happens on Ethereum such as arbitrage that can actually hurt users, right? So there's there's front running, there's back running, there's a lot of things that can happen in the Ethereum dark forest, right? It's a public open network, and there have been many solutions that try to push away the problem of, say, arbitrage driving up gas fees away from users into a different layer. And this has become its own major environment where there's a lot of money that's been flowing in there, a lot of innovation, a lot of ideas, but a lot of concern over centralization and also censorship resistance. So as we saw with the Tornado Cash issue, people running this kind of MEV related software, a lot of that MEV related software is censoring Tornado Cash transactions and other sanctioned transactions. Um, and if we see the natural end game as centralizing basically block production, we're no better off than than the most centralized chains eventually. So there's a lot of ideas flowing around that realm. Even in L2, like how should MEV work in L2, and that's still a work in progress. But I think Ethereum wants to really consider the MEV problem at the protocol layer, and there's a lot of research ongoing to fix that. Something that and you spoke about how amazing it is to be able to run a validator in your living room. It's incredible that basically a single person can be the next one to produce the next block on Ethereum, right? It's like this global decentralized database, and you're the next one that's building on top of it. And and like the little guys have power compared to these big institutions that run millions of nodes and whatnot. And out of all the blockchains that are out there, I'd wager that Ethereum is really the one that has the biggest hobbyist community that runs the network itself, because it's possible. In other chains, that isn't even a possibility because of how large they are or the compute requirements. So I'm passionate about solving this MEV problem in a way that continues giving power to the little guy, continues preserving censorship resistance, and doesn't get us to a point where we're worse off than before.
I'm not sure what your stances are on running MEV boost, but like I've been running that on my validator, and I think last month, like my validator proposed a block for the first time, and like like since I saw it, I'm like, okay, like I got to do some digging. I got to see like where this reward came from, because it was relatively high. I think it was like 0.2 something ETH. I look into it. It turns out like that Jared from Subway character had like front ran like 2 or 3 like meme coin transactions on Uniswap or something. I'm like, wow, I don't know how to feel about this. On one hand, I feel a little bad for like kind of I guess profiting from someone being front ran on a meme coin, but on the other hand, it's a little extra ETH. So it's a very interesting thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that any system like adversarial system like Ethereum benefits from having economically rational actors and actors that try to maximize their gain. I think that we can't expect everything to be just altruistic. Like Ethereum should function under people trying to maximize their gain, and that's totally reasonable. It's a totally reasonable thing to do. Instead, we need to define this. We need to better, we need to improve the system itself such that it doesn't have, very bad externalities on users, such as like censorship, right? Like, can we provide people the way to maximize their gains from things like this, without seriously damaging, the decentralization of Ethereum?
Yeah, when it comes to MEV boost and my personal validator, I care about censorship, right? I don't care so much about user value extraction, because it's going to happen, one way or another. And in the current state of the thing of Ethereum, it's going to happen. So what I do is I set the minimum bid threshold pretty high. So, well, if you need to bribe everyone in Ethereum and it's my turn to be bribed, you're gonna have to pay a lot of money. You're gonna pay 1 ETH to me. So that's my minimum bid. And to my surprise, I got a MEV boost block for 7 ETH a couple weeks ago.
What?
Yeah, I didn't really dig into it, but I was like, wow, okay. I mean, if everybody did something like that, like they set a minimum bid to a certain level, then this, produce spending money to censor certain transactions, or however you want to attack the network by having access to validators, will cost some amount. So I figured, well, if I'm going to be, I guess, part of this problem, then I'm going to be one of the squeaky wheels that you have to grease a little extra. Exactly, yeah. So most of the blocks I get are not MEV boost because of my minimum bid threshold is so high. But there's occasionally I get that one that's exceeds the threshold. So there's an idea for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to inquire after this podcast about that. That's crazy. All right, so two more cues to end off on the Ethereum stuff. Relatively, of course, controversial ones. At this point in Ethereum's, we'll call it like life. Can it succeed without Vitalik? And I guess we're talking about blockchain, the community as a whole, its development, etc.
Can it succeed? Yeah, absolutely. Would it be worse off by a significant margin? Absolutely. I think that Vitalik's role today is really in that 30,000 foot view. He comes in and he shares where he thinks the end game of this stuff should go, but he's not dictating it by any means, right? Like, he comes in and he talks about the big debate about like, is it fine if block production is centralized but validation is decentralized? What about L2s, L2 bridging, like that kind of stuff? He comes out with these massive blog posts that are incredible, and you learn a lot from. but he's far less involved in the day to day. And I think it's great for his health. I think it's great for everyone. And he's been trying to decouple himself for many years. If you asked me this question back when the Beaconchain launched in 2020, I would say absolutely not. I think we'd be screwed if Vitalik left. He was so instrumental in things like, how should sharding or the merge or all these things work. And now the ideas are there. I think there's very capable people, but I think we really look up to him as kind of that guiding beacon, at least to understand how to reason about the future. He's not as involved anymore, I think, in like actually building this stuff.
Got you.
Yep.
Any thoughts there, Preston?
Yeah, 100% agree, right? Like, if Vitalik used to be this, like, almost like a central point of failure, people thinking, oh, if Vitalik wants to quit or anything like that, then Ethereum's in big trouble. Well, nowadays, I mean, that's not so true, like Raul was saying. Vitalik's still coming through with excellent ideas and research, but it's kind of reached a bit of autonomy where the original people who were there when Ethereum was being conceived are no longer involved in that capacity. There's new people, and there's far more of them. So I mean, like, it's kind of a self-sustaining, self-fulfilling project. So it would slow down for sure velocity, but it would in the end still succeed, 100%.
And second question there, I guess, a little bit playing off of that one. Would we consider Ethereum to be the most decentralized blockchain? And you can attack this from any perspective, by the way.
That's a great question. I mean, if it's you have to be really, really, really strict about definitions here. So, like, are we defining it in, like, what matters when it comes to decentralization? Is it like the number of nodes? That's what critics would say. If I say yes to your question, is it number of nodes? It's not number of validators, because on Ethereum, one person can be running 10,000 validators, right, or a million, 100,000 validators, whatever. I think number of nodes and I think it's like the compute requirements, the ability, like we mentioned, that you can run a node in your living room. You can still validate the blockchain, and I think a lot of Bitcoiners would agree with that. Right? I would say that yes, I think by that metric it is. It has the biggest, I think, hobbyist community that runs nodes. People want to run nodes for many purposes. You don't even need to run a validator to run a node, right? You can just run the blockchain, and you're contributing to Ethereum's decentralization. And I think it's been designed also in a way such that even if, like, a big chunk of validators, they disappear off the face of the earth, the blockchain will not stop. It's not going to halt or disappear. A lot of other chains, they make the trade-off where they design it such that if a certain amount of validators go offline, the chain stops, right? Like we've seen that with like with Solana. Chains like Cosmos can halt, for example, if a scenario like that occurs. On Ethereum, even if a big amount of nodes are wiped off the face of the earth and validators are, the chain will always continue. So yeah, I'd say by a lot of metrics, I think yes, it meets that requirement.
You just pissed off every Solana listener in the room, by the way. Go ahead, Preston.
Yeah, I like Solana, so I'm mad. I was kidding, but no, really, like, Ethereum is very decentralized, right? And what that means to me is a lot of what Raul is saying. It's about accessibility for the common user, right? If you think about these really big projects like Bitcoin, if you want to be the one to produce the next block, you have substantial investment required, right? You need a significant number of computing power, or you need to be very, very lucky, which is not going to work out. And being able to run it on consumer grade hardware is just, I mean, that's just the dream right there. And Ethereum being as big as it is, and with these resiliency and liveness priorities that it's taken, I truly do think that it is the most decentralized and would continue to be so for the foreseeable future. Haven't seen anything quite like it yet. A lot of people make different trade-offs, but Ethereum, like, is true to its mission to try to be a world computer in a money settlement layer, and it's very decentralized. 100%.
Awesome. Yeah, I was actually a little worried, like for a second, that like one of you guys might say like Cardano or Ripple or something like that. Could be completely off script for me, actually. But so I think with that we can kind of do like a little go into a little bit of like maybe like a little hobby or a skill set that you guys have that's like little known before we end off. Maybe we'll touch on yours first, Preston. You mentioned earlier, actually, in the podcast, a little bit about this, but planes.
Yeah,
Can we talk a little bit about that? You're a pilot or something?
that's right.
Is that true?
I am a licensed pilot. Yeah, on my dad's side of the family, there's a lot of aviation there in our blood, so he really inspired me to go do that. And for a long time, I thought I would enjoy being an airline pilot. I still might. I never really got there, right? But I have my own small plane, a little 4-seater plane. It's not very fast. We hardly fit in it, but it's a lot of fun.
Nice.
The smiles per mile are just off the charts. So it's a really great hobby, something that I really enjoy, and something that I think is pretty rare. Like most people can't do it, and just gives me a lot of pride to to have one skill that not a lot of people can do, and just it can take you places you've never been before. So it's really enjoyable hobby, and I encourage anyone with the ability to try it out.
But how does that work? Are you just able to like kind of jump in your plane and just land in any like airfield that you see, like any like any landing strip that you can spot? Or
Pretty much. I mean, there are some private fields out there, but in the U.S. there are hundreds, thousands of public airports. I mean, they're like they're like streets. If it's a public airport, you can land there. You don't need permission. You just start
really?
start flying that way, and then you call if it's a towered airport where they have a controller. You say, "Hey, I'm 10 miles out. I'm coming in to land." And they say, "All right, get in line, and then I'll let you in." I mean, I could even land somewhere like LaGuardia or something big, but they'll charge you a fee perhaps, but you'd be allowed to do it. It's not. It's public. It's not private. So you can go anywhere you want to.
Yeah, that's like true freedom. That's like true freedom.
Yeah.
It's got to be like therapeutic to a certain extent to be able to do that.
Yes, it's very fun, especially when you get out in the middle of nowhere and you're just sort of like counting chicken coops and just sort of like you have a lot of time to meditate. You really think, wow, this is a privilege and something unique, and I definitely take time to appreciate it.
That's dope, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think Raul, for you, I'd love to know a little bit about your ability to speak Cantonese and like why you know that. And are you fluent, by the way?
Yeah, at this point, I understand. Perfectly comfortable in almost pretty much everything except for like hardcore technical topics or medical topics or whatever. But yeah, no, I love learning languages for some reason. I think it's a lot of fun. I think especially like there's with the internet. The internet, so much of it being English, we don't realize just how much of the internet is in other languages, and how much is out there, right? And my wife is from China, basically right outside Hong Kong, so strong Cantonese culture and influence there, and it's a lesser known, it's a lesser spoken language. Mandarin is really the most popular one in China, obviously the volume of people, but Cantonese is such a rich culture and history. And I think it's fascinating. Really, you get to learn a lot about the history. You learn a lot about like how people think differently. It opens up your brain in so many ways because it's so radically different than anything else. And also spent a lot of time learning Japanese. It's been quite a few years at this point, and it's awesome. There's a lot to learn there. And the best part is really when you can fully understand what people are saying, and when you didn't understand that before. Say the first time I went to China, for example, I was completely lost at the dinner tables. People were speaking. I was just on my phone. I was just like, I don't even know what people are saying. And we just
Right.
came back from a trip there to see family, and it's amazing being able to like have in-depth conversations with anyone, any family member, with grandparents, with uncles, with cousins, and just fit in. And wow, like it opens up a whole world of people that you didn't know. So I think that's exciting to me. There's also a big Ethereum community, that speaks Chinese, obviously, and they've invited us sometimes to give talks or talk about Prism stuff or proof of stake. So yeah, it's awesome.
I think what's got to be the most satisfying thing is when you're over there, somewhere in China, and you haven't said a word yet, and as soon as you start speaking Cantonese, I'm sure you get looks where it's holy, this guy speaks Cantonese. Is he playing with me right now? Kind of thing. How does this guy know Cantonese?
No, the funny,
'Cause it's not an easy language to learn, I
the
imagine.
funniest thing is all the things people say behind your back in public places, even in the
Oh my
elevator,
god.
or behind your back or in front of you, and all kinds of things. It's hilarious. Thankfully nothing mean or anything, but it's been really funny. Oh man, his nose is so long. Where is he from? Damn, he's so tall. Oh man, his eyes are so weird. Why is his ear like that? Right here. But no, it's yeah, people are they're really grateful that you take the time to learn their language. It's unfortunately the language is losing its influence, right? It's not taught in schools anymore, so a lot of kids can't speak it anymore. And just preserving that culture, I guess, is important.
Totally. I think I learned a little bit of Mandarin in college, but I think my understanding was that they only teach Mandarin, and it's pinyin they teach. It's kind of I don't know, it's easier to read, I guess, versus just the characters, right?
Yeah, there's 50,000 or more Chinese characters, and all of them represent different concepts and words and
Wow.
ideas, and it's a lot of rote memorization. But there's a lot of patterns in there too, which is really cool. And
Oh my
funny
god.
enough, they don't have as many loan words. So they have unique words for things. In other languages, we like to say English words, right? Like in Spanish, we say a lot of English words. We call it Spanglish. But in Chinese, they don't. So they come up with new things, and they have to be creative, right? How do you say optimistic rollups, right? And I think the best translation is something like happy spring roll. Um, but it's amazing.
I would love to know how they say ZK rollups.
No knowledge spring rolls.
That's wonderful. Oh man. Well, listen, guys, I appreciate you for coming on today and telling us your stories. And yeah, with that being said, I think we'll end off here. Thank you guys again, and we look forward to seeing what you continue to contribute and build in this space. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Hunter.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this week's episode of Beneath the Layers. If you're interested in listening to more, make sure to check us out on YouTube or on any of the other major podcasting platforms. Also, we're hiring. So if you're interested in working on cutting edge tech, scaling Ethereum, etc., make sure to apply at jobs.lever.co/Offchain Labs. Additionally, a disclaimer: nothing in this podcast should be taken or understood as financial advice of any kind, and all opinions expressed by the host, myself, or the guests are solely their opinions, my opinions, and do not reflect the opinions of Offchain Labs as a company. All that being said, thank you for watching. See you guys in the next one.